tomorrow is the big Minnesota Supreme Court hearing tomorrow morning with respect to whether or not Donald Trump cannot hold office because of alleged insurrection in violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The case is being tried in Colorado, but I think the bigger case to watch is the Minnesota Supreme Court case, because appeal from the Minnesota Supreme Court goes straight to the United States Supreme Court. And everyone figures at some point that's where this all has to be decided. And of course, as we've talked before, there are potentially huge ripple effects on the GOP nomination process and the 2024 election overall. So anyway, just a reminder, the timing of that, the big case, I think, really takes place tomorrow morning in Minnesota. So,
hey, Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
I had. So how long would it take for that Minnesota trial to play out?
Well, it's not trial. Well, okay, yeah, it could be, because it's an appellate court. They could have a referee sort of do the factual stuff on whether what Trump did constitutes insurrection. I think the idea is they'll get an initial decision on the first legal issues they're looking at, the general applicability of this 14th Amendment provision to Donald Trump. And if they decide it does apply to him, there's some terms issues, some legal terms issues that have to be interpreted. Then you get to the issue of factual question about is what he did with respect to the election, the electors pressuring Mike Pence, and then the stuff on the Capitol riot on January 6th, whether any of that or collectively constitutes insurrection within the meaning of the 14th Amendment. That would be a bit of a mini trial. And all of that would probably be decided, I would think, before the end of the year. And that could get it on the United States Supreme Court docket, end of the year, beginning of next year. Ballots have to be printed in January. So there's an enormous amount of pressure to move on this, literally within the next two months. So I think that decision happens quickly, and it ends up on the Supreme Court docket potentially, right around the Iowa caucus, right in there. They're going to have to decide pretty quickly if it gets there.
Would a Supreme Court decision be far-reaching, like so it wouldn't just be one state or two states?
That's right. It would have national application, because the Colorado case is Colorado, and Trump being on the ballots there. Minnesota is on the case would be applicable to whether he's on the ballots in Minnesota. And if it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, from the Minnesota Supreme Court to the U.S. Supreme Court, their decision on the 14th Amendment would govern across the country.
Okay, so if you had to take a side, and I rarely ask you this because it's kind of, it's so subjective to your opinion, but it's better than my opinion. And you're not political about this, which is why I'm going to ask. If you had to take a side on which way Minnesota is going to go, which side do you think it's going to go?
I would guess Minnesota. I'm going to Vegas and placing the bet is how I like to put it. That's how I always put it, right? At some point, you got to stop flipping coins and when I clerked in the Federal Court of Appeals, by the way, the judges used to always tell me, take a side. You could be right, you could be wrong, but you need to come out with a recommendation one way or the other. Don't be wishy-washy.
Yeah.
If we buy it, we buy it. And I would say if I had to bet on where Minnesota will go, I would bet they'll probably find that he's disqualified under the 14th Amendment. It's 6 Democrats, 1 Republican, I think, on the 7-member Minnesota Supreme Court. I don't know if there are any recusals involved, but if I had to guess, it'll get to the insurrection question, and they will probably conclude. And again, this is just a guess, but if you just look at the way it lays out, there's not any universal opinion on this, but there are some very strong, reputable scholars who believe he is disqualified. Including one former federal judge whose opinion I highly respect, Mike Ludig. So, I would say that if I had to bet, I would bet they'll probably find he's disqualified, and it'll go up to the U.S. Supreme Court from there.
Is Mike Ludig a Republican or a Democrat?
Mike is a Republican. He also headed the Office of Legal Counsel in the George H.W. Bush administration before becoming a Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals judge. And I think I don't know this for a fact, but I think it came down to Mike or Sam Alito for the Supreme Court spot that went to Alito. I think those are the 2 finalists for it in Bush's eyes. Mike, highly, highly regarded. He left the Court of Appeals, became the general counsel of Boeing, and now he's been out, talking a lot. He was the advisor to Mike Pence, in fact, when Pence made the decision that he could not, not certify Biden's election in the counting of the electoral ballots on January 6th. So, and Lawrence Tribe, of course, is one of the most, he's a Democrat, but he's one of the preeminent legal scholars. We all read his treatise in constitutional law in law school, and he and Mike Ludig together have said they think Trump is disqualified. Other people, former Attorney General Mike McCasey says, I don't think so. But that's based on some language in the 14th Amendment. If you look at the broad policy of what they're trying to do in the 14th Amendment, I think it leans toward probably a decision that he's disqualified. And then we'll see what happens when it gets to the Supreme Court with the 8 justices there. I say 8 because I don't think Clarence Thomas will participate in that decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you that knew all that, well done, because it would take an education in the law and experience practicing it.
Hey there, Hedgeye Nation, or if you're not part of Hedgeye Nation, thanks for watching Hedgeye on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure to click on the button below there. Subscribe to our YouTube page. You can also follow the link in the description to our website to get even more great investing content.